Hey, I'm Rachel Cunningham, and you're listening to Joyful Love, episode 86. If you're ready to bring joy and connection back to your marriage, stick around. Each week, I give you the tools to uplevel your thinking, open your heart, and bring joy and fun back to your relationship. Because it's not enough just to stay married. We want to love being married. Today, I have a super special guest for you, and we're going to be talking all about money. We're going to be talking about money for those of us who really, really like to spend. And her name is Franchelle Caesar, and she's a life coach. She is a financial coach for spenders. So welcome, Franchelle.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So I want to first of all just tell the story of how we met. I think it's super fun. And then I'm just going to ask you to tell us more about yourself. So how I met Franchelle is we both signed up for a mastermind, a business mastermind for coaches. And so both of us were on our way there. And I was just like kind of minding my own business as I do in line to get onto the plane. And where were we at? We were at a layover.
Yeah, that's
It was
crazy.
a
I don't even
layover
know where
somewhere.
we were.
It was a layover. Right. It was a layover somewhere, but I was minding my own business, looking at my phone, probably getting my ticket ready to be scanned. And I look up and I see this beautiful woman who's wearing a face mask that says coach. And I said, oh my gosh, she's one of my people. She's like, and I thought she's probably going to the mastermind in Orlando that I'm going to. So I introduced myself and she was like, yep, I'm going there. And then we sat together on the plane and we chatted and I probably like overshared.
No, you shared enough. It was great.
But yeah, and we just hit it off. And so we were in that mastermind together. And so anyway, like when I was starting to ask you guys what you wanted me to teach on in here, and some of you said money, my first thought was, oh, I don't want to really coach on that, or I don't want to teach that in here. I want to bring on somebody else. And so Franchelle was the first person that I thought about. So
Cool.
again, welcome, Franchelle.
Thank you.
I want to know just kind of what your story is. What led you to become a financial coach for spenders, which is such a unique thing. We don't hear about that often.
Yeah.
So tell me
Yeah.
what led you to that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, first off, I want to say I had the life coach mask on very intentionally because I believe in putting out that signal. I was like, if I wear my life coach mask, someone else who's coming to the same mastermind is going to find me. And you did, and it was so great. So I'm so happy that we met that way.
Yeah.
But so I was a medical doctor for, gosh, like 15 years, I think. I have always been just kind of like a good girl trying to win at life, right? Like trying to do all the things that you're supposed to do to be successful. I was the first one in my family to go to college. So I think a lot of it came from that, kind of like seeing what was going on around me and thinking like, okay, let me do it a different way. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I wanted to do everything perfectly and completely. And so I did all the school that you could possibly do until finally they're like, look, you got the doctorate, you got to go do something. And so I became a hospitalist and I was unhappy. I really didn't feel suited in that job. There were lots of parts of it that kind of had me to stretch who I was. But I didn't realize it at the time. I just knew I was unhappy. And when I had my babies, I realized that I wanted to really be more present for their childhood. I wanted to, be there in the morning, make them a hot breakfast and pick them up from school and walk home. Mm-hmm. And it's so amazing because that's exactly the life that we have now. But at the time, I was up early in the morning, dropping them off at daycare at like 7 a.m, coming home at 7 p.m. My mom was keeping them in the evening and I'd just like be there to tuck them in. Mm-hmm. And it was terrible. And so I started trying to figure out how I was going to get a different job. And I thought I needed to get another, multiple 6-figure job, go from medicine to something else with a different lifestyle. So I spent a lot of time really thinking about that. And thankfully I had the presence of mind to kind of like decipher what my next chapter would be intentionally, and really think about like who would it I didn't want to make the same mistake again and get into a career where I was like, it's not suited for my personality. So I was like, who was I when I was 12? I was like, what did I like to do? What did I like to play? And then I was thinking about like, what do I love about this job that I have now? Even though I don't like everything about medicine, what is it about it that I do like? And so I was able to pull those pieces out and then think, okay, how can I intersect these parts of my personality and make it profitable and like actually like have a different career? And that ended up being coaching, but I didn't know it at the time.
Mm.
Um, I realized that in order to leave my job and kind of like not have to go to another six-figure job, I needed to get rid of all my bills, like all the debt. And so I sat down one day. I remember I added it all up. I calculated everything, and it was like over $600,000. And so I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I was like, oh, okay, well, here's a project, right? I was like, this is a lot.
This is a challenge.
Challenge.
Yeah.
But the thing that was so transformative was I could see that like if I didn't have all those bills, that I wouldn't have to make a lot of money to live, to have our current same lifestyle
Yeah.
if I didn't have all these things. And, the thing about it was the things on the list that I was paying for, because I was just paying over time. I was like, oh, they give you an option. You can pay in full, you can pay over time. And
Mhm.
I would always be like, oh, okay, what's the difference? I'll just pay over time. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Um, but what I realized was all those things as I was making this, mindset shift in this period of my life, all those things were things that I thought I needed to have to be happy.
Mm.
And so once I could see it and release it, I paid off the debt really fast because a lot of it was like sell the house that I don't even like, like
Right.
all
Yeah.
this all these different things that we had and stop shopping to fill a void and use that money to pay off debt. And so I ended up paying off it was $624,000 and some change. And I paid it off
Mhm.
in a year, 1 year,
Wow.
12 months, which was amazing. I was surprised because I thought it would
Yeah.
take 5 years. And then I kind of drifted around a little bit, trying to wonder what I should do before I realized, oh, I should help people pay off debt really fast.
That's
Uh,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me what is different about, like, because when I hear you speak about money, it was like I remember sitting on the plane with you and you telling me who you coached. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, she's a coach for spenders. I'm a spender. And it was like the first time I didn't feel guilt about being a spender. And
Yeah.
I was like, and it was so fascinating to me that I've never heard that before, that it was actually okay to be a spender. And there's just
Yeah.
two different types of people, spenders and savers. And so tell me what kind of led you to that concept of dropping the guilt around spending.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now that I'm helping a lot of spenders, I realize the way I think about it is different from the way other people think about it. Because what happened was when I saw the debt, I was like, okay, how do we pay this off? Right. I looked at Dave Ramsey, I looked at some people on Instagram, and I was trying to use their process. I was trying to create a budget, which I had tried years ago. You know, how you try it and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you start it, you stop it, you start it, you stop it. I said, okay, let's get serious about this. Let's start it this time. And I think the difference between me and other spenders is that when I looked at it, I didn't say, I can't do this. Something's wrong with me. I said, this process is broken. I was just like, something's
Yeah.
wrong with this. Like this, it's not me, it's this. Something's wrong
Yeah.
with this. And that's where I really went to work. So it was about the first 2 months where I was like, okay, I'm going to hunker down. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to cut up my credit cards. I'm going to budget. I'm going to do it by July. And then at that, I was like, no, that's not sustainable. There's something different. And that's when I realized, oh, there's savers and there's spenders. And this
Mm.
process is for savers. And we spenders need a different process. And then I released all my expectations and I just started figuring it out for myself without thinking like I'm supposed to do a certain thing. I was just like, I'm just gonna do some stuff and figure out what feels good. And then I started having fun with it. And then the debt just started like melting away. It was just going so fast. And I was like, this is actually fun. And it's
Yeah.
funny because the day that the debt was paid off, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
God, right? It was like this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no guilt. I mean, especially when I tell people I paid off like over $500,000, who am I to judge? I'm not judging anybody. Right?
Mhm.
Like you can buy what you want. It's like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna judge anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much I'm sure that goes into that. There's being willing to let go of what you don't need in order to pay off debt, I'm sure. And there's also like that other piece of trusting that money is going to come in and
Mhm.
trusting that your eyes are going to be open to like, where is money going to come in to pay off this debt? Like, I'm sure it's both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that spenders have that may be different from savers is that spenders kind of always feel like there's more. It's like, it's fine, doesn't matter. Even if they're charging it, they're like, I know I'm going to pay it off. Like, I know there's more money coming in. Where I think a lot of savers kind of feel like they have to hold on to it because what if what if we're not going to make more? What if something happens? What if we need this emergency, $1 million over here? And it's like,
Yeah.
spend some of that, right? And
Right.
so even when my spenders don't realize that they're thinking there's more, like they're worried, they're like, oh my gosh, the account's going down. They're still also saying things they show that they believe that more money is coming. And so I just show them how to connect the two. I actually teach them a cycle where at the end of the month there's more money coming, and I help them connect that visually because a lot of times it could be like, like what is this, May the 2nd? So it
Mhm.
could be like, April 29th, and they're super stressed out about the account going low. And I'm like, it's April 29th. More money is coming on the 1st. That's just like 3 days away or something. And so once they make that connection, it's like, oh, well, we're so used to looking at money linearly, like it's going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. You're on this emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
I teach them, no, look at it like a cycle. You're coming back around. And even if you make a mistake, you got another chance and another chance. You just get it, keep getting better at it little by little, and you'll feel really good about your money.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of the things I noticed about myself as a spender is I come from a family that lived in poverty most of my life. And so then I got married and we developed this lifestyle that was wealthier than anything I ever experienced as a child. We're like middle class, and middle class feels rich. So
Mhm,
so
mhm.
like so often what I would do is like, and we were always entrepreneurs. So some months we would have a big influx, and then other months it would be like, oh, there's nothing coming. And so what I noticed about myself as a spender is like those big months, I would be like, oh, I have to buy everything this month, even if I didn't need it, and that was something that I had to learn to be aware of in myself is like, just because you have this massive amount of money, you can still trust that there's going to be enough next month. You don't
Yeah.
have to keep spending. And I think just like little shifts like that to understand about yourself are
Mhm.
so important.
So good. Yeah. I teach that having is a skill. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong if you don't feel comfortable having money, because a lot of spenders are just like what you said, like
Yeah.
the money comes in and you can't, like, we always have a wish list, right? We always have a list of things kind of in the background of like, when I get this big lump of money, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like all these things.
Yeah.
We always have that wish list. And then we get the money and we don't feel comfortable just sitting with the money and the wish list. It's
Right.
like, okay, now let's go ahead and merge the two and get the things that we've been
Yeah.
waiting for. And so I teach them like it's okay that you feel that way because that's normal, but just cultivating the skill of like having money and just like letting it sit there and letting all the things that come up about the safety of money sitting there, because there's a lot of like, I don't feel, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And just to kind of let's coach through what's coming up for you when you just let the money sit there and you don't buy the things on your wish list. And so that is also part of the cycle is, just being able to like have money sit there because there's always a reason. The brain always makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. I love how exciting you make it feel to pay off debt and to have money and to let it sit there. Like when I talk to you, I feel like, oh, is she like that almost like that dopamine hit that you get from buying things.
Yeah.
You're teaching people how to create that by
Yeah.
paying off debt and having money.
Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the first things I learned is like money loves a playful spirit. It
Mm,
wants you to play with it. It doesn't want you to like put it in a headlock and be like, we got to pay the bills. It's like, no, let's play.
I love
Right. And so
that.
everything is filtered through play.
I love that. And it brings me to a question that I often get from people who are married to spenders. And they're like, they're spending so much that we can never save. We can never save for big things. We're not going to have a retirement. Like, the saver's brain is like in survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
And they feel like it's, if their saver or their spender partner would just meet them,
Mhm.
and start saving, everything would be fixed. What would you tell them? Like, what would you tell someone who is married to a spender?
Yeah, I'm writing that down. A saver's brain is in survival mode all the time. That's lovely. That's like the best way to put that.
Mm,
I get a lot of people who, when they hear what I do, they'll come up to me. They're like, I'm a saver, but my partner is a spender. And I try to tell them this and this and this, and they just won't do it. Right. And I'm like, well, that's because of the way you're telling them. Because, spenders love freedom. This is why budgets don't work for spenders, because we love to live in the moment. We love to be able to, a budget is like, okay, let's forecast what's going to happen next month. But a spender wants to be like, if something comes up during the month, I just want to be able to go out and, like say yes and go on this great adventure and, envelope system, be damned, right? Like I'm just going to
right.
get all the money, right? And so what'll happen is like a saver who's well-meaning will try to, get their spender partner to like get on board with the plan, but the way they're going about it is not effective, and it actually makes the spender worse, because not only does it, pile like guilt and shame, like we're trying to do this thing and you're messing it up, or we have these goals and you're not on board, because the person's on board, right? Nobody wants to like, blow up the family budget or anything like that.
Right.
Um, but not only does it cause that guilt and shame to get stronger, but it also a lot of times will cause them to spend more. Because whatever the reason is that they're spending, whatever the void is that they're trying to fill, you're just making it like bigger and more energetically charged, versus getting to the root of what it is and figuring that out, which is what I do in coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I usually will tell them, it's, for one thing, okay, the nest egg, like the concept of the nest egg and
Mhm.
saving for retirement, that does not motivate spenders at all. Like nobody cares about that. Right? Like,
Because it's not in the moment. It's way too
it's not
far
in
in the
the
future.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the future. So if we have a goal that's more tangible and immediate, you can activate a spender to save like it's nobody's business,
Mm,
which is how I paid off my debt. Is I just had that switch in my mind of like, this is the why, the big why, right? This is the reason, it's the purpose. And all of a sudden I was able to like call in money and really like supercharge and make these big changes that didn't feel difficult. I didn't have to use willpower at all. I was just like, I knew why I was doing it. And it was for my babies.
yeah. Yeah. Having a big reason like that is huge.
Mhm.
Yeah. And tapping into whatever your partner or your reason is like that big why, right? Like
Yeah.
discover what your big why is. And like what I often say is like, ask yourself why you want to meet this goal and then ask again and then ask again. Like, why do
Yeah.
I want this? Okay, why do I want this? And like ask it like 3 or 4 or 5 times until you really get to, oh, that's my core desire. I can
Yeah.
get on board with that.
And it's usually a feeling, right?
Hmm.
I want to feel free because I want it to be easy because I want, it's like behind all these things, there's this feeling. That feeling is the void that they're trying to fill. So you have spenders that go out and they see things on the shelves because it's a beautiful display, and then you get that feeling because, they make the display to evoke the feeling. So
Yeah.
see it and it's like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. So you want to bring a piece of that home with you. But you get home and you put it with your collection that doesn't look like the display. You don't get that feeling. You go out, you buy something else.
Mhm.
Right? Or you're unhappy with your life. So you go on these vacations, and you go out to try to create that feeling, but it doesn't last because it happens on vacation and you come home and there's all the trouble at the airport and yada, yada, yada. So now you're back home and you're planning another vacation. You're spending all your money on these trips instead of figuring out what is the feeling I'm trying to create and then intentionally creating that feeling within yourself in
Yeah.
everything that you do.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And like tapping into like that root thing, like if you can understand that your partner wants freedom, they want to
Yeah.
feel free, like, oh, there's this thing and I want it. Right. I
Yes.
hear the Amazon purchase complaint a lot. Like every day I have a new Amazon box on my, like
Yeah.
they're looking for that kind of dopamine hit that like helps them feel free and excited. And so if you can understand that root, you're going to navigate that conversation so much easier.
So much easier. I'll tell you the best way that I ever created that feeling of freedom is when I started riding my bike around the neighborhood.
Mm,
If you can imagine $600,000 worth of debt versus just get on your bike for 30 minutes, ride around the neighborhood, let the wind blow in your hair and in your face and just and it's important to say the words, right? I would ride my bike and I'd say, I feel so free. This feels so easy. I'm
I love
so
that.
happy. Right? I do that, and then I wouldn't feel like I needed to go shopping. I wouldn't feel like I needed to buy anything or create anything new or an aesthetic in my house because I felt it from the inside.
Mm-mm.
So it's things like that. We call them parallels. What's the feeling? What's the other thing in your life right now that you can access that feels exactly like that? Let's do that and say it out loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that thing that doesn't give you a negative in life, right? Like some people might say, well, I mean, eating 10 cookies gives me freedom in the moment, but like it's gonna give you a net negative. Right.
Exactly.
And like I love that you said the bike thing. I caused me to remember like when I was a kid, my favorite thing was to just get on a swing and I felt so.
Yes.
And then a couple of years ago, before my back started hurting, I was learning how to ride a longboard, and I would just like get on the longboard, and the wind was in my hair. So, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I love
That's
that.
all
Like,
we want. Right? We
yes,
want that, but we feel like we can't access that in the everyday. So then we just go out and like, like zombies trying to like hunt down the thing, or like you said, like eating our emotions, trying to figure
Mhm.
out what's going to give us that feeling. But it's fleeting because it's not the real genuine thing. It's
Yeah,
just it's just a cover up.
yeah. So getting really clear on like what's going to create that freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting on board with, okay, we're going to create that freedom in other ways consistently, and look at our habits, and look at, which is where coaching comes in, right, of helping
Yeah,
you to really understand the root of what's keeping you from doing the things that you want to do.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
um what other questions? Let me see. I have a comment in the group that I'm going to read out loud. Katie says that makes a lot of sense. I'm a saver, and my husband is a huge, all caps, spontaneous spender. So yeah, we're speaking right to the problem here.
Yeah,
We see you, Katie.
yeah.
So now let's I would love to hear just kind of about, like, I know that you started a mastermind. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the Debt Free Mastermind, so fun. It's 3 months. It's a group coaching. And I think groups are important for spenders. So I always love getting spenders in groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's when I tell, like it's me and you talking, right? And I'm telling you things that happened to me, it's kind of like, okay, yeah. But when you hear like the whole room, everybody's nodding, going, yeah, me too. It
Mhm.
gives you so much more reassurance that, like, okay, I'm not alone here. Cause I used to think I was alone. I'm like, am I the only person who can't go to Target without it turning into a shopping spree? Right. And then I get other spenders in the room and they all have their different stores, but it's like, oh, I know that feeling, right? So I love mastermind. So we get together. I take them through all the hot spots, right? We talk about, well, there's 4 areas of money that we talk about for sure, which is creating money, um, saving money, spending money, because you can still spend. I don't change you from a spender to a saver. I just help you be an empowered and enlightened spender. And then having money, developing that skill of having that we were talking about. And then we talk about the hot spots of food, because there's eating out and there's restaurants and there's groceries and there's I hate the kitchen and there's all the things, right? And all,
Yeah.
I have 5 kids and they're all picky, or they all eat different things, kind of thing. So we talk a lot about food. We talk about clothing and having lots of clothes and nothing to wear.
Mhm.
And then we talk about mindset and what we were just talking about. What are you trying to feel? If we can find that feeling that you're trying to create, you will pay off your debt so fast.
Mhm.
So it's a group that, some people have debt. A lot of spenders don't have debt. So everybody is welcome in there, and the information applies to everybody. And the results are magical, because I do teach law of attraction too.
Mm.
So woven throughout the coaching, there is creating the life that you want. We talk
Yeah.
about future self stuff, lots of future self, because that's how I got out of debt too. I was like, who am I when I'm debt free? Right?
Mhm.
Who am I? I'm going to the park a lot more. I'm riding my bike a lot more, right? So
Yeah.
we do a lot of future self stuff. Um, and it is 3 months, and it's amazing. It's magical. That's
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. I have a favorite, like when you said law of attraction, 4 years ago, Chris and I manifested a huge vacation. Let's see, was it 4 years ago? It was 5 years ago now. We wanted to go to Yosemite and we wanted to take our kids to LA. And like, we were like looking at the cost of this. And we were not a family that took massive vacations. We were like, let's go camping. Let's go, let's go visit grandma in Florida.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like we kept our vacations pretty small. And so we wanted to do this huge vacation because I was turning 40. My oldest was turning 18. My middle child was turning 16 and my youngest was turning 13. And I was like, these are like 4 big milestone birthdays
Yeah.
all in one year. We wanted to take this trip. And like our scarcity mindset was like, that's an expensive trip. Like that's over $10,000 to take us all for 10 days. And so I ended up, we ended up talking about it and we were like, what if we just booked it and trusted that we'd have enough money?
Yeah.
And like, that was like before I really started dabbling into the coaching world and understanding our future selves and how to think and create the results that we wanted. And so it felt like a very scary thing to do. But
Yeah.
I was like, when my husband said it, he was like, because he found law of attraction stuff before I did.
Uh-huh.
And when my husband said it, I was like, this sounds like crazy bullshit, but okay, let me just like step into that and say, okay. And I promise you, within 1 month of booking the tickets, like we both ended up getting jobs that like were like, oh, this pays for it. That we have our monthly covered and then it's paid for. And it's so beautiful to tie that into really smart financial decisions. And
Yes.
it's I love that you tie the two together. It's so important. You can't, I don't think you can do one without the other,
It's
especially
so
when you have a saver mindset
yeah.
or
Yeah.
a
It's
spender mindset.
a spender
Sorry.
mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. And I definitely, even from the beginning, I just recently started talking about law of attraction, like in my marketing,
Mhm.
but it's always been part of the coaching because that's what I did. And I was like, you can't really, I think when you're in debt, you can't imagine the life that you'll have when you're out of debt.
Mhm.
And so I do a lot of work on like, you have to be able to imagine your life after the debt. Because if not, like you could have 6 debts and you can pay off the first 2 and then you'll just like fill up the card again because you don't have the identity of someone who has cards with a 0 balance.
Mhm.
Right? So it's a really like tricky time as my spenders start paying off their debts. I'm like really intense on them, like, hey, let's spend some time deciding ahead of time what you're gonna do on the weekend, how you're gonna, who are you in this new, because you're gonna be tempted. You still have the wish list, like,
Mhm.
we still want to keep these cards at 0. The game changes. It
Yeah.
changes to a game of like, how many zero balances can I collect?
Mhm.
Right? Because it's a really, I want to almost in my mind say like a dangerous time where you get progress and you slip. It's almost like success intolerance.
Yeah.
You like slip back into it even stronger because you're not ready for it. You're like, who am I right now? It's an identity
Right.
shift. Yeah.
Total identity shift to go from being in debt to having an abundance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
So
like Jim Rohn. I don't know if you follow like the late great Jim Rohn, but
I
he said,
don't. I don't
I
know
don't know
who
if
that
ever,
is.
yeah, oh gosh, he's like old school philosopher. Look him up on YouTube. He's awesome.
Okay, I will. Yeah.
And there was one quote where he says like if you're playing a lottery or something, like if you're gonna win $1 million, it's best you become a millionaire real quick so you get to keep the money,
Mm,
right? Because otherwise you can get $1 million. If you're not a millionaire in your identity, you
mhm.
will spend the money and then some.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's the philosophy that I approach my spenders with. I'm like, oh no, we got to make you into the identity of a debt-free person
Mhm.
as we're paying off the debt so that you actually remain debt-free. And nothing's wrong with debt,
Yeah.
but like I just want you to be like have awareness and like be really grounded in your decisions.
Yeah. In your opinion, are there times to go in debt?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first time when I got out of debt, it was all in unintentional
Yeah.
debt. Like it was just, I was just drifting through trying to create the American dream, right? Had two homes and two cars, and, we had a little IRS debt, had credit cards, just like collected all these student loans, all these different things we collected. Um, and it was like, that was me not intentionally designing the life that I wanted. That was me kind of more responding to society's pressures and what I thought I should have. I had this giant house. I didn't even like, like I didn't
Yeah.
even have kids. I had two dogs and had like 5 bedrooms. Right?
Mhm.
And so it was like, it was just unintentional. I was just
Yeah.
tumbling through the world trying to figure things out. And now when I invest in my business, I go in and out of debt. It's not a problem because it's intentional and I'm making decisions and I know the life that I'm creating. And
Right.
so it's always like, what's your intention? If you can
Mhm.
stop and pause before you charge something, because I don't take credit cards away from spenders. We don't cut them up at all. We need those. We figure out which ones will give the most benefit. Like,
Right.
which
Yeah.
ones have the flyer miles, which ones have the bonus cashback rewards. Like we still use them. And I'm a Dave Ramsey certified coach, but I don't do that all that the Dave Ramsey does,
Mhm.
because taking that away is not teaching you how to use it. And it's more empowering to like know how to use your cards versus
Yeah.
saying these are off limits, something's wrong with me, I can't be trusted.
Right.
Right. So yeah, so we use our cards, and when you use them, you put a pause so that you can actually think about what you're purchasing. Do you really need it? I have a whole like spending filter, like 5 questions for spenders to ask themselves before they make the purchase. If you're a small business owner, we love to buy courses and invest in coaching. And there's a filter for that too. Like, okay, what are you hoping to learn from this? How are
Mhm.
you going to make sure that you get the result that you're looking for?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
that.
We are certification junkies.
Yeah. Right.
I
Exactly.
just made my like intentional wish list of like all the certifications I want. And it's like, okay, like this year I've got enough. Like I'm doing enough this year. And I just like was like, okay, like I can create this plan for the future and
Mhm.
also recognize that I have enough this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. And then also like if you're getting a certification to fill that void, like you want to
Mhm.
feel, right, blank. I want to feel confident. I want to feel, knowledgeable. I want to feel like an expert. Then
Yeah.
that's not the good reason to get it. But if
Mhm.
you're getting it because it seems like fun, wouldn't it be fun to have this specialty certification? Wouldn't it be great to like, be around people who also have this interest in this specialty
Mhm.
kind of thing? Like that's a great reason to go back
Yeah.
and get another certification, but not the fill the void one.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like if you're like, I'm an expert, I feel confident in what I teach, but I think it'd be really fun to play with this other thing.
Mhm.
That's different.
Yeah, that's a beautiful filter. I love that. It's like you're making a purchase from I'm already enough.
Yes.
And you can apply that to anything, like, right? Like, even like whether or not I buy ice cream, like knowing am I buying it because I'm feeling an emotional void, or am I buying it because ice cream sounds really good today and I'm good enough as I am, so I'm going to go buy it, right? But if I'm buffering like an emotion, like let's go deal with the emotion first. Let's go create that internal fulfillment first, and then make a decision about ice cream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share before we end this call today?
Um, I think we covered everything. Just if you have a spender in your life and you're not a spender, it's easier to get them to, you know, open up to you and be on board with your plan if you don't approach them with like any sort of judgment, and just kind of know that their thoughts are different from your thoughts,
Mhm.
and the way they think about money is different from the way you think about money. And same goes if you have a saver in your life. Like, just,
Right.
have open conversations where there's not a lot of judgment, or, like, you're not assuming that you know what they're thinking, and just kind of
Mhm.
ask why, why is Amazon? What did you buy? Okay, why are you, and not in a judgmental way, but just kind of like try to get to the feeling of what they're trying to buy.
Yeah, dropping that blame and criticism and like really seeking to understand who they are and
Exactly.
what their voids are and how you can meet that with compassion and understanding and have a real conversation instead of you shouldn't be doing this.
Exactly. We're trying to go to, the Grand Canyon this year, and it's just like,
Yeah.
it makes it worse. But yeah.
Tell me about, okay, so I wanted to brag on your planners. Like when we were in the mastermind together, like I think before it even started, you had created a planner for the mastermind. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. It just guides me right through everything I'm supposed to do. And then I realized that you made planners for what you do, of course, because you are like the planner queen.
Yeah.
And so tell me about the budget diary and how that's incorporated in what you do.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Remember, I was telling you I was going to change careers. And I went back to look at what I liked to do when I was a kid, what I liked to do when I was 12, and it was make planners. It
Mhm.
was with a ruler and a pen or a pencil. And I would just, like, in the summertime, I just would make all these planners. So I would do this. I would like make a planner, and then I get the TV guide, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna watch the Brady Bunch at 11, then I'm gonna play with my Cabbage Patch Kids, right? And I just like would make these schedules.
That's
And it wasn't
amazing.
until I know it was like it's so when I was deciding to change careers, I was like, what did I love to do when I was a kid? And that was it. So I was like, okay, planners have to be somewhere in there.
Mhm.
And I've always made them. I made them when I was working as a doctor. Before we had computer charts, we had paper charts. Well, I always had like my charts were all printed out, right? They were like
Mhm.
print out the template, and I like fill it in with the patient's stuff. And my residents would be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I know. You get my history and physical forms done so fast because mine were like check boxes and like of all the most common symptoms.
Yeah.
And so I knew planners were always going to be a part of what I did. It
Yeah.
wasn't until I was like almost 40 though that like you can sell these on Etsy. I was like, what? What's
Mhm.
Etsy? Right? And people were like selling planners. And so I was preparing to create this, massive personal development, planner that you could use for like, your life, because I was
Mhm.
using one for my life. And in the meantime, like before I could get to it, I was paying off my debt, and I
Mhm.
was using this giant calendar, and I condensed it to this notebook. And then finally I figured out, oh, this is my system. And I created a planner. And that's how the budget diary came about, because when I was getting out of debt, I ended up condensing my system into this repeatable process. But the thing about the way my brain works is if there's a repeatable process, I don't like to reinvent the wheel each time.
Mhm.
So I've seen some savers who are like, why are you using that? I just use a notebook, or I just use a spreadsheet. And I'm like, I can't tolerate like doing the same thing over and over again, like recreating it each time. So that's why I made it into like a step-by-step thing for a month. And then I just like put 12 of them together, and I'm like, here's the process for a year. So that's what the
Yeah.
budget diary is. And this is
Beautiful.
the exact process I use to get out of debt. I was doing it on paper. And then about a couple years ago, I created a spreadsheet for it. So the ladies in my group, if they're a paper person, they get this. If they're a spreadsheet person, they get the spreadsheet. And it just makes life so much easier.
Yeah. Nice. Beautiful. Okay. Where can people find you at?
You can text Fran to 44144, and it'll ask you for your email address, and that'll get you on my email list. I share financial coaching for spenders specifically, so it feels very loving.
Amazing.
every Sunday. And then on Mondays, I go live just like this. Like I go live through Zoom and on Facebook. And I record what is becoming my podcast, and we keep it very casual. And so when you're on the email list, you get the link, you can be in the room and all that. And, we can chat and that kind of thing. So that's the easiest way to find me. My website is 1millionspenders.com. But it's a train wreck, but you can go to it if you want to. And I'm also on Instagram at 1millionspenders.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Franchelle. This was so good. I know it's going to kind of blow some people's minds open. Like, oh, my partner isn't the devil.
Right.
They're just like, or I'm not, right? Like we can drop that guilt and drop the criticism and meet both spenders and savers with massive compassion, understanding there is a root cause and looking at that. So I think
I'm going to tell you in your audience one more thing.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the way we learn to manage money is from a saver's perspective. Because when you poll Americans, about 60% are savers. So all of, anybody who's going into finance to teach finance is going to be a saver, because we spenders, we are not trying to look at the numbers. Like we don't want to know what we spent, right? So most of the experts in finance are savers. So what we've been taught is from a saver's perspective. And spenders are about 30% of Americans. So we kind of, we learn how to use the system that's based on a saver's perspective, not knowing, because there hasn't been one that is for us specifically. So when we're comparing ourselves to a system that isn't created for us, of course we feel like failures, right? It's kind of like, having a fish climb a tree. Like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you climb this tree? Everybody climbs the tree. And it's like, I'm a fish, I'm swimming. Right. And it's not fair. And so when you're in a partnership with someone who's different from you, if they're the spender, they are constantly feeling like they're bad with money, because the only standard we have to compare ourselves to is from a saver. And so in that partnership, have some compassion for your partner, because they're like, you have a system if you're a saver, but they don't have a system that makes them feel confident with the way they think.
Right.
So that's why we're getting the word out, to show like there's another way. We have a system that works for us.
Just hearing you say that makes me think, oh, what you do is so important.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do. Like, thank you for speaking out for people who are, kind of shamed a lot, and for just helping them to have a way to make progress in their finances as well.
Yes. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Joyful Love. If you'd like to know more about my work, come visit me at rachelcunningham.com. That's Rachel spelled with an AEL, Cunningham.com.